Alright, so before I get started with the video itself, there was some stuff I wanted to go over regarding, well, this video's existence. This is more so for my usual viewers, so if you're here just to see some indie 3D platformers, you can skip to the time on screen. With that said, hi! I'm back! I know this may be kinda surprising, given I said last year that I was ready to move on. And even when I got back into live streaming, I said I was still done with doing these kind of videos. Well, I've come to realize since then that no, I'm really not. Now, don't get me wrong, I've greatly enjoyed doing live streams, but my previous thinking that it scratched the itch left behind by quitting video making, it admittedly hasn't. I've really been missing making videos, and I think in hindsight, I just needed a long break more than anything. Now, I do want to apologize for pulling you all along with my personal indecisiveness, but many of you have been really sympathetic on the matter, which I'm truly grateful for. Thank you. So what does this mean for the future? Well, I'm still figuring that out. I want to avoid making videos just for the obligation of doing so, don't want to burn myself out and all, so I'll just be making videos when inspiration strikes, however inconsistent that may be. Once again, thank you all for the continued support, it really means a lot to me, and I only hope I can continue to make it worth it for you all. With that said, how's about we talk about some more indie 3D platformers? Man, 3D platformers really are thriving nowadays. I shared this sentiment about a year ago with my previous indie 3D platformers video, and it's felt like things have only gotten better for this genre since then. For one, since that original video, a 3D platformer went on to take the AAA scene by storm, and how unlucky of me, I chose to get rid of my PS5 right before Astro Bot became a thing, so I missed out on playing it. Whoops. But in the case of the indie side of things, the genre has continued to expand further and further, with new indie 3D platformers practically popping up left and right. Heck, this year alone, we're getting over a dozen different games from this group. Like, just to list some examples: Big Hops, PaperKlay, Ruffy and the Riverside, Tori Saturn, Demon Tides, Crescent Overload, The Knightling, Hiragami, Haste Broken Worlds, Mr. Sleepy Man, Foldy's OS Quest, Kill-A-Flow, Motor Slice, Tall Trails, Hop and Marty, and The Big Catch are all either currently slated to come out in 2025 or already have come out in 2025. Long story short, I don't want to hear a single person claim this genre is dead ever again. There's a plethora of 3D platformers out there nowadays from creative, ambitious indie developers, and today, I'm here to highlight some of them once again. Now, like with the last time I did this, I'm going to be covering a mix of indie 3D platformers, some that are already out, and some that are still in development but have demos available. That said, since it has been some time since I last did a video like this, I'm going to keep it simple and largely stick with shorter games this time around. Don't want to bite off more than I can chew from square one, if that makes sense. I'm also going to be retreading some ground a bit in this, because some of the upcoming games I mentioned in the last video have since come out, and I want to go back and give them a proper look. But that's enough pre-ramble. Let's talk about some indie 3D platformers. So to start things off, let's go back to one of those upcoming games from the last video. In case you need a refresher, one of the games I featured last time was Frogun, a retro-style 3D platformer from developer Molegato, focusing on the young Renata Hops as she ventured dangerous ruins in search of her missing archaeologist parents. The Frogun made for a simple but fun gameplay mechanic. The game captured that 64-bit era feel quite well, and despite some jankiness and annoyances here and there, I overall had a nice time with it. Well, at the time of that video's release, a sequel to the game, Frogun Encore, was just a few days away from releasing, and since it's out now, I felt it'd be fitting to give it a proper spotlight in this video. And right out the gate, I'm very happy to confirm that Frogun Encore is very much an improvement on the first game, but I'll take this one step at a time. Frogun Encore takes place a few years after the events of the original, with Renata spending the summer visiting Jake and Hatter, friends she made along the way during her adventure in the first game. But the vacation is cut short by the return of the Fly Boys, the minions of the first game's villain Beelzebub. This time they're led by General Fluff, a technician loyal to Beelzebub who's seeking to revive his fallen master. So it's up to Renata, Jake, and Hatter to pursue him across the world and prevent his plans from succeeding. That's right, it's a worldwide adventure this time. No longer are you traversing the usual platformer biomes, this time you're journeying through levels based on real-world locales, albeit still within the Frogun universe. This ain't an Egypt level, it's a Sandalia level. Now gameplay-wise, Frogun Encore does follow the first game's structure pretty soundly. The levels are fairly linear, with the goal simply being to get to the end, using your Frogun grappling hook to overcome obstacles and defeat enemies, but every level's got additional challenges that add on to the level end emblem when completed. These challenges consist of finding all the level's coins, finding both the emerald eyes, getting an obsidian skull in a hidden bonus route, beating the level without dying, and beating the level in a fast enough time. Doing these extra challenges will unlock extra benefits along the journey, such as health upgrades and a coin radar, the latter of which was a very good call. And fortunately, once again like the first game, you don't have to do all these challenges in one run of a level. So if you want to collect everything on your first run and then book it through the level in the next, you're free to do so. With that said, I'm willing to bet some of you are wondering, okay, so what does this game do differently from the first game? On paper, not a whole lot actually, but in execution, the changes made make quite a notable difference to the experience. Firstly, Renata herself. For one, she moves quite a bit faster than she did in the first game. And the slower movement worked fine for the most part with the level design, but the faster movement definitely feels better, helped by Renata's new moves. In the first game, all Renata could really do was jump and use the Frogun, either to pull herself towards larger things in the environment, or to grab onto smaller things like pots or enemies. But Encore expands on these, particularly with two new abilities, the first of these being a double jump. It's pretty self-explanatory functionally, and while it does give her more height, it still has some weight to it, so you still gotta be careful. And I know some out there find double jumps to be a cliche or uninteresting movement mechanic, or in some cases outright bad design, but I'm not part of that party. Call me easy to please, but I like double jumps in platformers. That said, the other new ability is a bit more interesting. It's functionally another kind of double jump, but with a bit more to it. See, in the original game, when you had something in your Frogun's grasp, you could only fire it forward. However, if you press jump while in midair, while holding an object or enemy, you fire it downwards, and use the momentum to essentially jump again. So for one, you now have a means to attack below you, but also, you're then able to use the regular double jump after this, essentially giving you a triple jump. Now you may be thinking, isn't that a little broken? Yes it is, and the game knows it. The times for the time trials are demanding, and in many cases, to get just the level's regular time, you're gonna have to exploit the double and triple jumps as much as you can, and the level design is cleverly built around that fact. In the context of those time trial challenges, these new moves are especially fun to put to use, and that's before mentioning Encore's other biggest change, fixed camera angles. The original Frogun had manual camera control, and it was one of the jankier parts of the game, often getting caught on geometry and blocking your field of view. So for Encore, Molegato scraps the manual camera in favor of one that automatically shifts to specific angles at specific points in levels, allowing the game to show you exactly what you need to see at any given moment. And for a game like this, that works so much better. It's also better suited for one of Encore's other big additions, co-op play. Yep, you can bring along a second player this time around, with player 2 playing as Jake, who uses his snake buddy Snatch as his Frogun equivalent. Now granted, it's only local co-op, but I think that's fair. That said, if you really want to play this online with a friend, the Steam version is compatible with the Remote Play Together feature. But yeah, generally speaking, Frogun Encore definitely feels like a big step up from the first game, and it improves on the formula so much that it actually makes it hard to go back to the original. Legit, playing the first Frogun again, I was really missing being able to throw things below me. I also want to give a quick shout out to the game's soundtrack. The original game had a pretty good soundtrack, though admittedly very few of the music pieces stuck with me. On the flip side, Encore ups the ante with its soundtrack, with some very energetic and thrilling pieces to accompany the gameplay. In particular, I want to give special mention to the song for the opening level. It's a remix of the theme used for the first game's Outer Ruins levels, but now with a heightened scope, capturing that feeling of a new adventure with more drastic stakes. It's great. That said, while the game is an overall improvement, it's not without its hiccups here and there. It's got some glitches, mostly funny, non-intrusive ones, but occasionally actually annoying ones. And while the Switch version runs at a fine 30 FPS during gameplay, it often chugs on the world map. Also, the final boss, while a pretty cool fight with some really good music, is quite the difficulty spike. But yeah, all in all, I definitely recommend Frogun Encore. As a sequel, it builds upon Frogun's formula pretty successfully while ironing out many of its issues. And even as just a standalone experience, it's a fun, solid level-based platformer, with the option for couch co-op no less. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Encore got nearly as much attention as the original, which is a shame given how much of an improvement it is, but I suppose that's just how things are sometimes. On that note though, I do want to take the opportunity to mention that Molegato's currently got a brand new 3D platformer project in the works beyond the Frogun series. Not much has been revealed about it yet, but between the vibrant art style, the bubbly personality, and the larger emphasis on movement options, I think he's got something special in the works here. He's going to be giving it a proper reveal this summer, so hey, something to keep an eye on. Going from one then upcoming game featured in the last video to another, the next game I'd like to highlight today is one I've been greatly looking forward to since I tried its demo: PaperKlay. Developed primarily by Kevin Andersson, PaperKlay was a game that captivated me primarily through its unique world design. A platformer with a world made from crafting materials isn't an unheard of concept, but it's one that allows for a lot of creativity. And just off what I had seen and tried of PaperKlay, it looked to be taking advantage of its premise. But yeah, the game came out fairly recently, so let's see just how far that creativity ends up going. The game opens with our main heroes, Chick and Nugget. You get one guess what species they are, with Chick in particular having come down with a classic case of yearning for adventures beyond home. And just as he's sharing these wishes with Nugget, adventure comes swooping right in when the evil pirate Nox comes flying in on his airship, stealing their entire village and all the eggs in it, albeit with many falling off and leaving a breadcrumb trail. Thrilled at the prospect of adventure, Chick jumps into action to get the eggs back, with Nugget waddling not far behind. And that's basically the whole story. The journey from there consists of Chick and Nugget traveling to different worlds, finding the lost eggs, and crossing paths with NPCs of varying species and levels of sanity.
Come on, let's be nice to our guest. Toto, don't be shy now. What did I always say? Be kind to visitors if they ever come by, so be on your best behavior.
It does start to do a little something more narratively, with Nugget clearly out of his comfort zone at many points and him getting annoyed at Chick for that, but they simply talk it out by the end. On that note, this game's actually got quite a bit of dialogue. All the hub worlds and several of the levels have NPCs to interact with, and even when there's no one else around, Chick and Nugget will often chat with each other as they journey through a level. Now to clarify, the talkative nature of the game is, fortunately, not the annoying type in my opinion, helped a lot by the voice performances. The game's fully voice acted, and you can tell the entire cast is having fun with their roles, which just builds on the charming writing. In particular, I wanted to highlight Kellen Goff as the voice of Blinky, a manic sock puppet you meet early on in the game.
Fun fact about me, I can't close my eyes, which means I never sleep.
That sounds tough, not being able to sleep.
Oh, it's part of my charm. You'd be surprised what one can get used to.
And for as little as he appears in the game, Kevin Miller as the voice of Nox. He's clearly enjoying hamming it up as this cartoonish villain.
Who do you think you are? Nothing stands in the way of Nox. Not a couple of tiny chickens. And certainly not this village. Every last egg here is coming with me!
Also, to those who may be wondering, yes, that's the same Kevin Miller who voices Sly Cooper. Quite the contrast in platformer character, I know. The game's writing is overall pretty charming, and the same applies to the game as a whole. It doesn't go absolutely crazy with the world made from crafting materials premise, but it does still do some pretty inventive stuff with it. Enemies range from sentient flying scissors, to toy block trains, to ghosts that are literally just pieces of paper on a hook. Waterfalls are made from paper streamers, also most water you're able to walk on since it's just paper. There's massive forests made from stacks of books. There's some neat stuff going on in the world of PaperKlay. Though of course, that's without mentioning the core platforming stuff. At face value, Chick's moveset is pretty basic, consisting of a jump and double jump, a spin attack, a dive, a ground pound, a glider, a Mario-style triple jump, and most important of all, though he does have a couple unlockable expansions to the moveset, namely turning the mid-air spin attack into a makeshift jump, increasing the glider's airtime, and allowing you to high jump out of a ground pound. Now if you just use all these as they're given to you, it's gonna feel pretty standard, but 1, pulling off these moves still feel good to do, and 2, more importantly, I haven't gotten into the ways you can chain these moves together. For one, you can get some good hype by chaining together the different jumps, but that's not the most fun part about the toolkit. The most fun part of the toolkit is what you can do with that dive, because if you use the glider or the ground pound after a dive, you keep your forward momentum. Now all of a sudden, you're either getting around in the air quicker, or cruising your way across the ground, especially after you unlock the ground pound high jump, because then you can basically just infinitely chain that momentum. It ain't quite pseudo-regalia levels of movement, but it's fun to do nonetheless. As for the levels themselves, while they, again, don't quite reach the creative heights I was admittedly expecting, and often can get a bit repetitive with some of the obstacles used, I'd say they're overall still pretty engaging. Most levels are a decent enough length too, with really only one outlier that felt like it went on a bit too long, cool as its gimmick of rotating the level was. And speaking of that, there's actually a few levels in the game based around that gimmick with Nugget, being more so Captain Toad-esque puzzle levels. They were on the shorter side, so they never felt like they overstayed their welcome, and they made both for nice pace breakers and to help Nugget feel more involved in the adventure, though I did experience a very weird glitch on one of these levels. I actually had a couple glitches throughout on that note, mostly with awkward hit detection with the scissor enemies, but also another instance of falling through the level. That said, the game did run smoothly, so it's well optimized in that regard. Ultimately, while it didn't go as all out with the concept as I was expecting, I still had a great time with PaperKlay. And if you want a generally more straightforward platformer with a creative art style, some fun ways to mess with your moveset, and pretty charming writing and voice acting, I'd recommend this one. Also, one last thing before I move on. PaperKlay might have the funniest level transition animation I've ever seen in a platformer. So for the next game, I'm going to something quite different from the previous two, and not just because it's something that wasn't in the previous video. With that said, let me ask you this. Have you ever played Super Mario Sunshine? If you have, were you the type of player who'd go out of their way to clear every last drop of graffiti in an area before moving on to what you were supposed to be doing? If so, then I've got just the indie 3D platformer for you. This here is Project Shoreline from developer Spelldosa Interactive. A game that had itself a bit of a quiet launch late last year. I myself had never heard of it before a friend shared it with me shortly after it came out. And hey, it was free to play, so I gave it a go. And while it was a very bite-sized experience, it was a pleasant time nonetheless. In Project Shoreline, you play as this fish-mouse creature known as a Mori, and using your trusty water gun, it's up to you to clean up this beach area, particularly getting rid of the corruptive gunk corroding the beach and its little critters. And yeah, that's the whole premise. You run and jump around the shoreline, spraying away all the dark matter and restoring the environment to its natural beauty. I suppose a more fitting description of this game would be Power Wash Simulator, but with platforming and a little mouse guy, but having not played Power Wash Simulator before, my brain jumps to Mario Sunshine's graffiti clearing mechanics when playing this. Project Shoreline is admittedly not the most mechanically in-depth. You've got just a single jump with platforming challenges being pretty minimal, and beyond that, all you can do is either wide spray your water gun or pressure aim for more precise cleaning, which I found myself swapping between throughout. But honestly, even with everything being that simple, I found the process pretty enjoyable. There's something rather relaxing about clearing out the dark goop and watching the environment's color restore and all the flora reappear once a section's all cleaned up. It's a simple but satisfying gameplay loop. And thanks to the game being as short as it is, it doesn't overstay its welcome either. I 100%ed the game in just over an hour. So it makes for a nice play and finish in a single afternoon kind of game. Which again, it's free to play, so you're literally losing nothing for giving it a go. I will say, playing Project Shoreline for the first time did leave me wondering if the devs were planning on expanding on this idea at all in the future. And lo and behold, as was announced a month after the game came out, Project Shoreline was indeed a test game for a future project. Said future game, entitled Mori Wildwoods, appears to be taking the premise and character of Project Shoreline and expanding on both the world and gameplay mechanics, which honestly is really cool to see. So I suppose in a technical sense, Project Shoreline is a demo, but for the sake of this video, I'm not counting it as such. With that said, I think Project Shoreline's worth giving a go when you've got an open afternoon. Just be prepared for the likely case of beating the game, seeing you're just barely short of 100%, and then having to do circles around the environment trying to figure out what the heck you missed. On that note, it's now time to talk about some full-on demos for upcoming indie 3D platformers, which can I just say, there is no shortage of options to pick for this. Not only has there been such a massive boom for indie 3D platformers, but many of them have demos, which I think is great for a genre like this. But that said, I'm sticking with just 3 for now. And the first of the demos I wanted to talk about was for one of the games I mentioned was coming out later this year, namely the Knightling from developer Twirlbound. So right out the gate, I will say this one isn't quite a 3D platformer in the same style of, say, Frogun Encore or PaperKlay. Rather, it's reminiscent of the PS2 era where 3D platformers would often blend with other genres. Think like the Ratchet & Clank games or the later Jak and Daxter games, where yes, they're platformers, but they've also got a large emphasis on their gunplay combat. The Knightling's more along those lines, though in its case, it's an open-world action-adventure game, just with more emphasis on platforming than that genre tends to have, but I'll get into that. The Knightling focuses on, well, the Knightling, a young knight in training being mentored by the legendary Sir Lionstone. But when Sir Lionstone goes off on a daring quest and mysteriously doesn't return, the Knightling takes it upon themselves to find their missing mentor. Going off what's been shared both in trailers and this demo, we've got ourselves quite a coming-of-age story, with most of the villagers being reluctant to the young Knightling's capabilities to help until they prove themselves, which makes it easy to root for the Knightling to succeed. They're just a little fella trying their best. On that note, I do really dig the art direction they're going for with this game, particularly with the character designs. All the characters have covered faces of various kinds, with their eyes visible as white dots in black voids, which I think actually works pretty well. I imagine it helps the animation team not having to worry about animating mouths, and what's done with what is visible still helps make the cast feel expressive and full of life. As for the gameplay, like I said earlier, the Knightling is an open-world action-adventure game, taking cues from a few different titles in the genre. The main notable things in this game's case are, 1. The Knightling is built for proper platforming with a jump and double jump, and 2. Their weapon of choice is a magic talking shield, which is used for both the offense and defensive combat, and can be used for traversal via shield sliding. You're also able to unlock more abilities for both combat and maneuvering by collecting materials from defeating enemies and completing quests, or just finding them while platforming around the environment. And while I was only able to get a taste of the expanded moveset in the demo, it looks like there will be a lot of tools at your disposal in the full game. Combat in this game goes for classic melee style, and while you do have a dodge roll, you're more incentivized to use your shield, with one of the first unlockable abilities being a post-blocking counterattack. It can take some getting used to the combat, especially with how heavy it is and how much pause there is between attacks, but it's got some good weight to it and was perfectly responsive. And as a platformer, while the demo doesn't give much beyond the basics, it felt good too. And there was a more dedicated platforming section that required paying attention to audio cues, so that's got me curious to what the full game will have in that regard. It may end up staying basic in its platforming mechanics, but hey, 3D platformers come in all shapes and sizes. So if anyone out there is wanting a somewhat Zelda-like adventure game with more focus on being able to jump around, the Knightling's a game to keep an eye out for. It's currently slated to release in late August, so it's not too far away, and it looks to be releasing on all major platforms. So yeah, looking forward to this. For the next demo, we're going back to a more traditional platformer, this time with a little blob guy and his bunny inventor. What we have here is Teeto, Power to Change, courtesy of dev team Eat Pant Games. First off, what a developer name. And secondly, what an adorable game you've got in the works here, Eat Pant Games. The premise is simple enough. The world is currently dealing with an infestation of corruptive shadow creatures, and to help combat this, a bunny inventor named Nori creates our titular little blob guy, giving him the ability to absorb and cleanse the corruption of the shadows. However, Nori quickly discovers an unintended side effect of Teeto's ability. He can also absorb and take on the properties of objects around him. And so with these abilities at his disposal, Teeto sets off with Nori on his back to explore the world, fight off the shadow creatures, and in classic platformer fashion, collect stuff along the way. In this game's case, the main collectibles are powerful energy sources called Vionite, as well as Baby Michaels. That is legitimately what they're called. They're these little blob babies, and they're all named Michael. All with distinct attire too. Man, I love video games. Movement-wise, Teeto's got himself a jump and double jump, a spin attack, a roll, and a mid-air dive. But more notably, he has the ability to absorb the properties of items in the environment, with Nori's tech allowing him to utilize this absorption to his advantage. This can range from absorbing electricity to become a living electrical mass, to absorbing a flower and using its vines as a grappling hook, to absorbing a garbage bag and spewing out garbage as a projectile. It's very reminiscent of the copy abilities from Kirby, more specifically how it tended to be in older Kirby games like Kirby's Adventure. Each ability's moveset is super basic, and you're likely going to be swapping it out for something else soon after you've put it to use. It also allows for a bit of logical thinking, such as needing to absorb something to get yourself past this giant sentient tree who will otherwise make you leave his presence. Or, the most important use case of all, becoming a sentient armchair. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how far this mechanic is taken in the full game. On top of that, this game is just silly, and I mean that in the best way possible. I let out a good chuckle at several points in the demo, such as the combat tutorial.
You'll never defeat me! Oh no, I'm defeated!
Congratulations! You can defeat cardboard.
This bird side quest I did to get a Vionite.
There's a berry all the way over there. It's just calling my name. Karen, eat me please. And I'm like, of course I will, little berry. I am starving.
Why can't you just fly over there yourself and get it?
There's shadow monsters that way. Not that I'm scared or nothing. Besides, have you ever tried flying with low blood sugar? It's not ideal. If you give me that berry, you can have this shiny Vionite. And if you don't help me, well, I guess that just means that you guys aren't cool.
Or just reading all the various signs and graffiti in the city level. Also, speaking of the city level, it had a Crash Bandicoot-esque chase sequence. Instant BenjaMage seal of approval. But yeah, the Teeto Power to Change demo was a charming little adventure, and I'm curious to see more of what becomes of this game. Oh, also, almost forgot to mention, this game's also got co-op, including in the demo, which leads me to something really cute I want to share about the game. So from what I understand, Eat Pant Games is a two-person dev team, a couple to be specific, and during a test session the two were having, one of the devs revealed he had set up a room in the game as a means to propose to his co-developer. That is adorable. And before you ask, he confirmed that she said yes. And to top it off, you can actually access this room in the demo and even absorb the wedding outfits. Eat Pant Games, you are wonderful. And now we come to the final demo of the video. And to be honest, this game's one of the main reasons I wanted to do this video to begin with. It was a demo I had considered for the original Indie 3D Platformers video, but I never got around to playing it. And after playing it earlier this year, I wished I had included it. So, I'm here to remedy that now. And what a coincidence, it's another 3D platformer with a little blob guy. Or more accurately, a little slime guy. Here we have Slime 64, coming to us from developer WaveParadigm. I had seen posts about this game floating around on social media for the last few years, but again, I didn't get around to trying the demo until earlier this year. And thanks to that demo experience, I am very excited for this game. The demo, known under the full name Slime 64 Slimes of the World, is more of a vertical slice rather than a chunk of the game itself. That is to say, the demo experience was tailor-made specifically for the demo. And it's got a clever setup. The story of the demo is that you're checking out a museum about slime art and culture, and this includes entering biomes where you get to experience being the different types of slimes. So to give a rundown, you have your basic slime, who can only move and jump, but then there's also 4 different elemental slimes, the usual earth, fire, water, and air. And each of these slimes have their own unique abilities. The earth slime can turn into a rock and roll around, allowing you to destroy parts of the environment and sink in water. The fire slime gets a double jump and a forward dash. The water slime gets water jet propulsion, allowing you to accelerate forward. And the air slime can glide and hover. There's a couple more intricacies to some of the slime's toolkits, but that's the basics. And at the start of the demo, you get to go through trials and then more open-ended explorative levels with each elemental slime, allowing you to use each one's abilities to the fullest as you collect keys to progress, as well as collecting bells and whistles. I like that, that's cute. And these levels are pretty solid. But that's only the tip of the iceberg, because as you complete each set of levels, you unlock the ability to use those elements in the main hub area at the same time. But it's not just a fun little treat in the hub, no. because once all 4 sets of levels are complete, you get 2 more levels, each one giving you 2 of the elements at the same time and testing you on mixing those abilities. And this is where the fun really begins. Mixing together the rock form's physics and speed with the double jumps and dashes of the fire slime is addicting, and combining the water jet with the air hover to basically become a slime rocket is super satisfying too. But then you get to bring all your elemental powers together in one final level, and this is such a fun moveset to play around with. I think WaveParadigm really nailed this as a vertical slice, because I'm really excited to see where they take all this for the full game. Which, they have confirmed that the full game's gonna have a lot more meat on its bones, with a full story about saving the slime world from a robotic enterprise. To clarify, I do also think this game's got a fair bit going on for itself beyond just the moveset. Between the personality on display in the characters' animations and expressions, the charming interactions throughout the demo, and all the visual options to make the demo feel as retro as you so wish. The effort put into this vertical slice can definitely be felt, but being up front, it's that moveset that's really got me hooked. It is a blast to play around with. And that's before mentioning the post-game challenge rooms. Those just made me love the toolkit even more. I am so excited to see where the full game ends up going. Best of luck with this project, WaveParadigm. Heck, I wish all the devs working on these projects the best. And same goes to all the other devs I may or may not have highlighted in all this. It's genuinely amazing seeing the efforts all these talented people are putting into not only keeping this classic genre alive, but doing such varied things with it. Whether it be following in the footsteps of a specific inspiration, or pushing the genre to new heights. There's really no shortage of 3D platformers already out, or just around the corner thanks to the indie scene. And again, it feels like new ones are practically popping up left and right nowadays. And honestly, it's all the more inspiring to see when you look at the state the game industry is currently in. Not that the indie scene doesn't have its own issues, it ain't all sunshine and rainbows, but especially with the continuing decline of the AAA side of the industry, I'm truly grateful for all the indie devs out there, 3D platformer or otherwise, who choose to face those massive hurdles and bring their passion projects to life, despite the odds stacked against them. I know things generally aren't getting easier for you all, but I just want to thank you all for what you provide. With that said, this has been BenjaMage, thank you all for watching, and until the next video, have a nice day everybody. Man, it feels good to say that again.